So Cenk started this thread, and you chimed in on this. I have given a lot of people opportunities at TYT. Some have turned around and attacked me with absolutely no gratitude or decency. And every time they claim to be the moral ones as they throw their friends under a bus for their own careers. But I'm not going to stop giving people a chance. I'm not going to be the closed minded person they want me to be. At the Young Turks, we will always be for open minds and open hearts. So some, just random tweeter says, accept your employees forming a union, LOL. That kind of triggers Cenk. This is part of what I'm talking about. We have a union at TYT. It's a Yahtzee, and we had two very amicable negotiations and have a great relationship with them. But so many good people think we busted the union because people who worked here just brazenly lie about it. Now,
this is the Young Turks. Well, the topic is the Young Turks. We're on Due Dissidence. This is a great podcast. I think they've got a bunch of different kind of writers on there. You got Jimmy Dore on this episode talking about he used to work for the Young Turks and Cenk Uygur. And Cenk Uygur could be talking about Jimmy Dore. He could be talking about Dave Rubin. He could be talking about a couple other people. Let's get into this. Jimmy Dore spills the tea on Cenk Uygun's union busting at the Young Turks. What are we going to talk about here, fellas?
This is very typical Cenk. Yeah, I mean, technically, they are union in spite of his best efforts to stop them from being union. So you tweeted out, Cenk continues to reveal that he is one of the sleaziest media slime balls today. Here is proof he 100% lying about supporting his employees' union drive. He's actually a union buster. So let's take a look at what they said about this in Politico at the time. This is in 2020. Production and post-production crews at the left-wing news network, the Young Turks, voted Thursday night to unionize with the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, capping a surprisingly brutal campaign marked by intense opposition from founder and CEO Cenk Uygur.
Now, why is this kind of contradictory? I've gone on rants before about how I'm not big on unions, but that's not the point right now. Cenk is purportedly for unions, except when the camera's off. When the Young Turks don't have the cameras rolling, Cenk Uygur and by association, Ana Kasparian, it doesn't seem like they are as union friendly as the Young Turks are when you say, whoop, we're recording, mic's on, it's a hot mic. That's what Emma Vigeland was going after Ana Kasparian on, if you remember when we talked about the cat fight, the vats of chocolate syrup and everything. Jimmy Dore can't wait to come in here, weigh in on Cenk Uygur, and he's really very strongly against union when push comes to shove at the Young Turks.
A popular voice on the left. The Progressive Company, which was a big booster of Senator Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign, ended up voluntarily recognizing the union, but that came only after a drive that included two separate complaints to the National Labor Relations Board, the company's rejection of card check in favor of a secret ballot, a typical business practice that Sanders and other progressives have fought against, allegations of a political conspiracy to sink Uygur's recent congressional campaign, and at least two 1,500-word-plus screeds that Uygur mailed to staff arguing against employees forming a union, which were obtained by Politico. One NLRB complaint over the termination of a pro-union employee is still pending. So were you there at that time when this was going on, when the union fight was going on?
I think I was on my way out, but I remember one of the executives coming to me. We were having lunch with my current producer, Malcolm, and this came up. So I don't know if maybe I was there, maybe I wasn't, but I remember having lunch with an executive at the Young Turks, and this came up. And they were saying, we're going to have a vote. We're going to put a vote. And I said, that's not, you're supposed to be lefties. That's not how you do that. That's actually a technique of the man to try to discourage union or a formation of a. And he said, "What do you talk about? What could be more fair than an election?" I was like, "Well, it's called card check." And the fact that you are an executive at a lefty media organization and you don't know what card check is reveals that you guys aren't really lefties, and they're not.
Right.
And so what card check is, you don't have a vote, you don't have an election, because then the company can influence that election in many different ways. The way that if you're a lefty, if you're a real union person, it's supposed to go, it's called card check. So when someone gets hired, they decide whether they want to join a union or not. And once that reaches 51%, you automatically have a union. So you don't have an election, you don't have this big campaign, you don't have any of that. And Cenk gave speeches in front of the entire newsroom. I know about this. Hank Thompson did a documentary on it. It's like at least an hour long, and he details exactly all the ways that Cenk Uygur tried to bust the union. And one of the ways was he gave a speech in front of it saying that this is going to be bad and you shouldn't do this. And there was one employee who was smiling, and he said, "You're not going to be smiling later." And I think he was really intimidating the shit out of them. He threw papers down on the floor and he was you know how Cenk gets. And so he was doing everything he could, at least in that situation, to discourage the unionization of his company, which his company was giant at the time. They had gotten $20 million. They had, I mean, I don't know, at least 50 employees. I mean, it was a big newsroom when I walked in. It was, and you know, they all had turned their back on me because I was debunking Russiagate, and Cenk was propagandizing them about Russia. So I remember, and I gave them the correct advice to go do card check, and they completely ignored it, which just is another sign that they're not real lefties, and that they're not going to approach their employees unionizing or organizing in the way that a real lefty organization would.
So, when we talk about, sorry, Russell, go ahead.
Me and Keaton have gone back and forth on this a little bit. By this time you were definitely gone, but this has been my hypothesis.
Yeah, he was gone. I already know the timeline because I watched Jimmy Dore. Actually, I'm getting more into the left now with Francesca Fiorentini and even what's his name? Well, not Destiny, but Destiny was on with a guy I just found out about, Adam. Let me look him up real quick. Adam Friedland, who's a kind of funny, quirky type of dude, very smart, but downplays the intelligence, and others on the left. I've already been with like Kim Iverson and others, but I'm getting more into it. But Jimmy Dore, I've watched Jimmy Dore since 2020. He's one of the first guys I really got into. And so I know the timeline of this because I was watching him. I think that was right around that same time. And Jimmy Dore was on his own. I never watched Jimmy Dore on the Young Turks, so I know it was after that. But you look at it, the Young Turks got 20 million. They're a big business. Jimmy just mentioned that. They were a huge business. They got financed by Jeffrey Katzenberg. Yep, he's a tiny hat country guy. But venture capitalist firm established by Jeffrey Katzenberg, co-founder of DreamWorks, dropped money in. They raised 20 million in the fundraising round. So they got a lot of money. And their output hasn't been, to me, as far as views go, as powerful as the money that's gone into it. 20 million to be invested in it, with the doubling their staff from 70 to 200 employees, then dealing with the union problems. I would expect a larger viewing audience, but that's maybe why they're expanding. We just found out today that Cenk Uygur, shocking to me, I didn't know he was on the lineup. I don't know if it was a surprise or not, because I would have been talking about it leading into this. TPUSA. Now let's go to the right with Charlie Kirk. TPUSA. It's a TPUSA America Fest. Cenk Uygur entered the stage to a round of applause. I'm going to play this clip for you 46 days ago. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is Cenk Uygur tried to bust the union because they needed to maximize that revenue for their investors. And now I'm agreeing with them more often, but they're shifting where they are to be able to go on the stage with Charlie Kirk because that's where the action is. 46 days ago, on the election, Cenk Uygur went off on Donald Trump. 46 days after that, he got a standing ovation at TPUSA America Fest. You okay, bro? Check this out.
It looks like to a syphilitic clown,
Is he,
total moron, con man Donald Trump.
is he okay?
So
He sounds like he
if
can't
you
breathe.
lose to a buffoon like Donald Trump twice, what does that make you? Donald Trump is a crook, and he's going to rub you guys blind. You're talking about losing with class when that bitch Donald Trump tried to steal an election, tried to terminate the Constitution, or set off a riot, that he didn't mind if his vice president was murdered, bum rushed the Capitol, tried to destroy our democracy. He's the very worst in how
He's going to MSNBC, destroy our...
no class at all.
And here it is today, as of December 21st, Cenk Uygur, 46 days after he said all that stuff. Forget about the accusing Donald Trump of having syphilis. Forget about that. That's pretty bad. But he said that Donald Trump tried to steal an election. He's basically saying Donald Trump should have been in jail 46 days ago. And if you have him at AmFest, I'm fine with debate and discussion. I'm not even saying he shouldn't be there, but then you should have Young Nick there. You should have Laura Loomer there. You should have Candace Owens there. You should have a lot of people there then. It should be like a Piers Morgan segment live. But you don't have to give him a standing ovation. This was incredible. His face is on the screen. They know who's coming out. What?
Cenk, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for that warm welcome. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
So you see how this stuff works, man. Life is complicated. There's a lot to talk about here.
Cenk is screaming about how we have to have gun control except for trans people. We need them to be armed. One day he's screaming this kind of stuff. The next day, Ana is saying, don't call me a birthing person. I'm not a person with a uterus. As soon as she did that, I said, this is a setup. They decided they need to try to get. So I think that's probably closer to what she personally actually believes, and him too, about the gender woo-woo and that kind of thing. But it seemed to me they were trying to get a breaking points thing going, where maybe they could get both audiences. Cenk would stay in that, left, pseudo left lane. She would kind of get the why I left the left people. And then when they lost the election, they decided to go full MAGA. If Harris had won, Cenk would have stayed where he is. They would have had Ana deployed to the MAGA. That's how I read it. I read it
Agreed.
that at the very least, even if she believes what she's saying, and I think she probably does about that kind of thing, she got permission. They had a conversation, and he said, go ahead, it'll be good for business. I don't think there's any world where, with the way TYT seems to run, from my observation, that she would just go do that without Cenk signing off on it.
Well, because they have a history of being the worst liars and slanderers of people and their opposition, anybody who they see is their enemy or their competition, I think it's fair for you to have to launch that theory and posit that that's what's going on, because that's what it certainly looks like is happening, and it's not like they have any character or integrity to stand on. So yeah, I would completely believe if that was the case, because that's what it looks like.
Alt media is a lot like big media. It's a lot like corporate media. When you've got people involved dropping 20 million, not on every podcast, but I want to end with this. I do respect real ones like Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore he is somewhat identitarian in some of these social issues, but he does not let that rule him. He famously kind of went after some of the presidential candidates from the left side, Dr. Cornel West famously, and said, nah, bro, you're going down too much of a racial route, basically, and said this should be a people's route, and you shouldn't be alienating people based on the race stuff. And people on the left, of course, call Jimmy Dore on the right, but Do Dissident podcast, nice clip. I really like it. Let me know what you think. Do you believe in the Young Turks? Is it fake? Does it matter or not? What do you think about TPUSA having Cenk on there and not even having him there, people in the crowd giving him a standing ovation? Less than 50 days after on election night, he basically said Trump should be in prison. What's going on in alt media?
The next clip is ready below. Welcome to After Show Carnage.